Pre-dawn, 5:22 a.m. yesterday, blasts rolled through a remote stretch of Russia's western logistics corridor. That rail artery had fed Moscow's war machine for months. Ammunition, rockets, tools of siege. At first, local channels called it a minor fire. Minutes later, the scale snapped into view. A single Ukrainian operation had shredded an $800 million shipment of North Korean ammunition moving to the front. One event among thousands, yes. The cargo was the product of quiet deals between Moscow and Pyongyang. Those deals had grown bolder in recent months. In one precise strike, Ukraine didn't just cut a supply line, it cracked a pillar of Russia's external support. New satellite frames showed an inferno hundreds of meters long. Strings of freight cars burned white hot. Ammunition cooked off. Pressure waves rippled down the line. The site sat near the Bryansk region, a key transit node for foreign munitions entering Russia. According to Ukrainian defense sources, long-range precision drones and guided missiles hit the hub in a coordinated pattern. For Kyiv, this was more than a tactical win. It was a message. Distance would not protect illegal cargo. Secrecy would not hide it. For Moscow, the loss cut two ways. Material vanished in an hour. So did a story the Kremlin prefers to tell about resilience. In a war of attrition, logistics is destiny. Losing $800 million of ammunition overnight strains even a large stockpile. The trail of that cargo runs back to North Korea's deepening role. For over a year, intelligence pointed to Pyongyang shipping shells, rockets, and small arms to Russia. The motive was simple: cash, fuel, and technology. By mid-2025, Western estimates placed the flow at over 1 million artillery rounds. That lifeline kept Russian guns loud along the Eastern Front. This train was different, bigger, riskier. Reports indicated specialized munitions in the mix, possibly even ballistic missile components masked by false manifests and coded cargo entries. Russian transport bureaus, working through North Korean middlemen, hid the load under civilian covers. Ukrainian intelligence, backed by satellite tracking and Western reconnaissance, followed the spoor for weeks. The strike was not luck, it was a calendar of steps. Analysts mapped the timetable. They charted guard rotations and drone radar gaps. They picked the window when the train would be stationary. Drones skimmed low to defeat radar. Missiles arrived on the beat. The first warhead tore open boxcars. Secondary blasts did the rest. Chain reaction. One detonation lit dozens. Stacked shells ignited in waves. Fire crews reached the scene and could not close it. Heat, shock, and fragment spray drove them back. For hours, the depot pulsed and flashed. Red light bled into the night sky. Windows shattered in nearby villages. A social video showed a horizon like a false dawn. Russian outlets called it a localized fire, later a technical mishap. But satellite heat signatures and eye-level footage showed coordinated impacts and clean craters. Railbeds buckled, gantries folded, hundreds of cars twisted into scrap. The new North Korean supply stream, trainloads meant to refill Russian dumps, was gone. The operation fits a larger shift in Ukraine's approach. Not only defense, strategic interdiction. Since last year, Kyiv has stretched its reach far past the front. It fused commercial satellite data, Western ISR, and domestic long-range drones that can fly 1,000 kilometers. This strike showed the fusion working at scale. Two agencies steered the hunt: the Security Service of Ukraine and the main intelligence directorate. They blended imagery, intercepted logistics chatter, and, by some accounts, human sources. People with schedules, people with access. The target list they built emphasizes foreign supply lines, especially from North Korea and Iran. In Moscow, the mood cracked. Emergency councils met at the Ministry of Defense. Commanders raged at the loss and at the exposure. The Kremlin had denied arms trades with Pyongyang for months. Overnight, the denial rang hollow. The partnership intended to blunt sanctions instead became a public liability. Pyongyang felt the hit too. Money burned. State media stayed silent, then blamed Western provocation, then called it Western provocation against peaceful trade. The claim clashed with reality. Arms transfer under UN sanctions is not peaceful commerce. The failed shipment made that plain to anyone watching. Capitals around the region moved fast. Seoul's defense ministry assessed that artillery shells and short-range missile components were likely destroyed. Tokyo echoed the risk call. Both supported tighter enforcement of sanctions. China offered a muted line about restraint and de-escalation, supportive of stability, wary of entanglement. In Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky kept the focus narrow. In an address, he framed the strike as a message to any regime that fuels the war. He did not name North Korea. He did not need to. He stressed Ukraine's capacity to hit threats before they reach troops or cities. Calm, firm, defiant. Analysts traced the battlefield math. Russian units had already started rationing fire in parts of Donetsk. Some estimates put daily shells down by 40% from early summer. Domestic plants are running, but imported stocks pad the gap. Losing $800 million in munitions in one night widens that gap and slows operations. Western governments confirmed what they could. Satellites saw the blasts and the burn down. Thermal plumes matched ammo fires. US and UK officials quietly praised timing and accuracy. The European Union called it a legitimate act of defense against an illicit supply chain. Public words stayed careful. Private signals were clear. How did Ukraine reach so deep? Tools and methods. Long-range drones with stable guidance, accurate coordinates from space and ground. Quiet helpers inside Russia's network, perhaps. Kyiv did not confirm sources. It did not need to advertise. Results speak. One fact was hard to avoid. This was among the biggest hits on Russian logistics since the war began. It exposed fragile nodes. It warned every partner feeding Russia's arsenal that distance is not a shield. Inside Russia's infosphere, sensors moved. State TV dropped any mention of North Korea. The preferred script returned to mishaps and heroic firefighters. Yet independent military channels asked harder questions. Who leaked the schedule? Why were so many cars staged together? Where were air defenses when it mattered? Iran kept its voice low, a cautious note about escalation. Belarus shouted support. China stayed elliptical. The pattern told its own story. Russia's coalition can supply volume. It cannot supply cover. Within Russia's security complex, finger-pointing began. The Ministry of Defense blamed the FSB for route security. The FSB blamed local commanders and railways. The President's office asked for answers and tighter discipline. None of that replaces lost stock. For NATO planners, the lesson was familiar. You can starve an army by cutting its arteries, strike rail chokes, fuel farms, bridges, and depots. Make every shell that reaches the gun a small miracle. Ukraine is now doing that with 21st century tools and a lean budget. Zelensky's later line summed it up. Every shipment built on lies meets the same fate. It was not a threat. It was a policy statement, and it landed as evidence burned all night on camera. By late day, Russia tried to reroute. Alternate corridors exist, but they are longer and harder to hide. Track crews worked under guard to rebuild. Propaganda filled screens with domestic achievements. None of it changed the physics of supply. The win in Kyiv was quiet. No parades, no detail leaks, just professional satisfaction that planning, patience, and precision had bent the curve. A smaller country used information and timing to neutralize mass. What comes next? Russia may answer with long-range strikes. It may chase new suppliers in Africa or the Middle East. It may pressure Iran to step up again. Pyongyang may tighten secrecy and shrink cargo size. China will keep a distance and calibrate words. Diplomacy shifted too. The UN Security Council met. Western members called the arms flow a breach of resolutions. Russia called the session theater. Some abstainers edged away. Association with a failing covert network carries a cost. Ukraine pressed its advantage. It sought more ISR sharing, more air defense, and more long-range options. Not to level cities, but to keep cutting arteries. War is movement plus supply. Deny the second and first slow. South Korea's role grew. With Pyongyang exposed, Seoul increased quiet cooperation, technical advice, surveillance insights, and sanction tracking. The logic was simple. Weaker North Korean arms trade is good for Europe and Asia. Commentators called the strike a strategic earthquake. One operation delivered military damage, economic loss, and political shock. Rare, but not magic. It was a craft. In private, some Russian officials raised the core question. Has reliance on isolated partners gone too far? Deals with sanctioned states bring short-term volume and long-term vulnerability. Every train becomes a bet against discovery. Bryansk shows the odds. Ukraine, meanwhile, gained standing. Not just brave, capable. Not just enduring, innovating. It shaped the war's tempo with brains, not mass. That matters in Washington and Brussels. It moves votes. It unlocks packages. Expect the ripples to last. Russia will seek new routes. North Korea will hide deeper. China will hedge. Ukraine will refine its kill chain. Find, fix, finish, assess, and again and again. This is the war's new phase. Less about big arrows on maps, more about strangling flows day after day. Destroy a depot here, intercept a convoy there, make logistics commanders fear their own schedules. By sunset over the Bryansk rails, smoke still climbed into cold air. One truth stood out: impunity is shrinking. Precision and transparency are winning ground. Armies still fight, but information draws the map. In that reality, Ukraine is not only defending itself, it is rewriting the rules. Short, sharp strikes, clean intelligence, tight timing, and a message to any state that fuels the war. Distance is not safety, and secrecy is not a shield.